Recording started. Awesome. Hello, newbie. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Where are you in the world today?
Right now, I'm speaking to you from just outside London, a city called Milton Keynes in the UK.
Awesome. So I met Nuvi in Portugal
Hmm.
and we were on an African Lisbon tour. If you're ever in Portugal, make sure you check that out. We learned so much about
So good.
just blackness in Portugal, the slave trade. It was a very deep and intense tour, but a very necessary one. And kind of leans into the conversation that we're going to have today and discussing the diaspora and our experiences from my lens as an American and Nuvi's experience as a first generation Londoner by way of Ghana. But I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and lead us into that conversation. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
I'm excited too. I'm excited too. Yeah, as Whitney said, I'm a Black British Ghanaian. Even saying that phrase, that comes with its own journey because depending on who you're speaking to in the UK, you'll have a different answer.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm a Black British Ghanaian. I was born and raised in London, um, worked and studied in London, and only recently moved just outside. Um, I work in local government doing town planning policy. So, but I've had a varied journey up until this point, doing marketing communications before landing in this career. So yeah, and I love to travel. I love to
Yes.
travel. Yes,
Yes.
that's an important one. I love to travel. Yeah.
So you mentioned the complexities of even just saying Black, British, Ghanaian. Like,
Mm.
one, what does that mean to you to identify that way?
Mm.
And what was it like growing up with that's a lot of labels.
It is a lot of labels. Also, I love that you said British instead of British,
British.
sounding like one of
British.
us. I'm trying to keep my T's, but yeah, British is what they say a lot. Um, but you're right. It's been such a journey. So obviously, growing up in London, you know the people will know you're Black straight away. So you don't even introduce yourself as Black. You would just say, "Oh, I'm from London," if someone was asking you. But if another Black person was asking you, then you'd introduce like, the ethnicity or heritage. Um, and growing up, being African was not it was not cute. It was
Mm.
not cute, and you would avoid at most costs if you were not speaking to a fellow Ghanaian of mentioning specifically like where you were from,
Mm.
because it came with a lot of stigma. Back then, Africa was viewed as mud huts, poverty, um, sort of barbaric behavior, nothing advanced, nothing representing sort of anything of value, really. And that's even within the Black community.
Yes.
So sometimes kids would lie and say they were Caribbean, they were of Caribbean heritage. That was very,
Mm.
very common. I think you'd hear that more. Well, I can't speak for other people, but I had some Nigerian friends that would come out straight away.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm from Jamaica. They would not hesitate, but you're from Nigeria. I would just be like, yeah, from Africa, part of Africa. My parents are from Africa. But there was always shame that came with that. Um, and as you grow, you begin to develop more of an appreciation for your heritage. And within the Ghanaian community in the UK or London, I will say, um, at the time there felt like a strong sense of cohesion. So there was safety within that community, and it was more freeing to speak up about being Ghanaian once I was sort of a teenager, young adult, sort of, you know. And then obviously Afrobeats blew. And then it was
Yes.
cool to be associated with Africa. So it's
Now
been
we
a real,
have Daddy December.
oh yeah, now everyone's flying out except me this year. But
Oh,
yeah, it's been quite the journey, but it's definitely something that also I feel came from above. As my parents were immigrants, and loads of the parents of my friends, you're taught to keep a low profile. You're taught to keep a humble position and just work really hard. Don't bring attention to yourself. Don't put yourself in a position where you can be further criticized, because criticism will come regardless. So you had
right.
that narrative coming at you, and not in a, well, some people these days will say it in a toxic way, but back then I would never have labeled it as toxic, because you could tell that it was your parents trying to protect you and prepare
Yeah.
you for the world outside.
So while you touched on a lot of things, and we're gonna journey down a few of those paths,
Mm,
I'll start with the latter. Your parents are immigrants.
mhm.
They came from Ghana to the UK with, you know, I'm assuming the famous tagline, like the hopes for something better, um, for themselves, for their children.
Yeah.
What was that expectation?
Their expectation.
Yes.
Well, I think for both of them, actually, they were fortunate because they had older siblings here already. So they kind of had some idea of the fact that they could get at least more money than
Okay.
they were getting where they were. And then they also had a bit of an existing support system through those older siblings. Of course, when they came, it was different to what they expected
Yeah.
it to be. And it's interesting, it's only in my older years that my dad kind of spoke about some of the difficulties like they faced in terms of racism and um, just finding your space in a civilization that was still uh coming to terms with the fact that black people were in their midst, and that's what it was going to be. um so my dad, I think they both came over in the 80s, so they were both like probably just a bit younger than me, like
Okay.
late 20s, early 30s. And yeah, even in the 80s, there was still a lot of racism over in the UK, a lot. And when you're in London, that's dilute, but it was still bad. When
Yeah.
once you step outside of London, where there's not as much diversity, it it, it gets up there. Um, so yeah, it was definitely hard from my dad's stories, but they they had their goal, they had motivation, and they had the support of older siblings as well, who had been here a bit longer, who had kind of assimilated, so could guide them. And I think that's different to coming completely on your own, no clue of what you're signing up for, which I know loads of people do. And that's also a struggle in itself.
Yeah.
Um,
You use the word assimilated, and I want to touch on your parents came from a place that's very homogenous. Everyone looks like them, right? There's maybe what tribal language, or what city, or if you're from the city or the countryside, but everyone looks like you. It's more class than race.
mhm,
And versus if you grow up in America, you're already born into the complexities of what it means to be black,
mhm.
versus your parents had no idea of what it meant to be black
Yeah.
from the sense of an othering in another society. Do you know what that experience was like for them? And even if you don't know about from their perspective, what were some of the things that was passed down to you on how do you deal with this, and what was taught to you?
Yeah, I sadly don't know too much in depth about it, but I we've had conversations where I got sort of pockets of that perspective from both. I know that my dad's someone that has thick skin, and I think that's quite characteristic of older African men. So even when we were young at school and we would get comments, there would be this instant brushing off, like, don't even forget that it was ever said, because that person is irrelevant, because he had to develop that kind of thick
Yeah.
skin and develop that kind of strategy to what he experienced. But yeah, there were so many things that were normal and acceptable back home. I remember looking through my dad's photos, and you would have men just holding hands, but that's your friend, that's your brother, that's your cousin walking down the street. You're appreciating them, you're enjoying their company. And I think it was like two of his school friends, they were holding hands in like their university campus, and it was strictly platonic. But like over here, you weren't doing that. You were not
Wow.
holding another male's hand without getting a weird look. You're already getting the looks because you're black, and
Yes.
then you're holding another guy's hand, a sign of something romantic back in the 80s that wasn't looked upon highly at all. So the things that were so normal to them, there was like this kind of whiplash, like experience
Mhm.
back to reality. Like, you can't do that. People will, yeah, get at you, which is a phrase. I was trying to find a better phrase
Yes.
to say, but that's a colloquialism over here. People get at you for
Yeah.
doing that kind of behavior over here. Um, so I think there was a lot of silently observing, taking a step back, and it now shows in my dad's personality, where he was
Yeah.
always quite traditional. He's very reserved in a new setting, just observing, kind of seeing what the done thing is in this setting. Um, and my mom, she had an older sister and two older brothers who they had done the hard work. They had she had cousins here as well, but they were in professions that they were certainly, you know, in the minority. My uncle was a lawyer. My other uncle worked in finance, I believe, and as black people back then, that was very uncommon. So they also had this kind of stiff, stiff upper lip like resilience. We're just not gonna. We deserve to be in this place, but they had to teach themselves, you know,
Hmm.
that kind of resolve. And so they kind of took my mum under their wing. She was very protected in that way. Stayed with my aunt for a very long time, and yeah, as a typical younger sibling, just uh, was given a lot of guidance in that way. So I think my dad was exposed to the harshness of coming from like a homogenous culture and society into the UK society. And I think my mum was more shielded. But
Mm.
then through working and studying over here, she kind of quickly picked up, again, what not to do, what not to say, but also just tried to find community with other
Right.
Ghanaians so you weren't exposed to that as much. Yeah,
So, from their experience, what was passed down to
right.
you?
Mm. Um, Work really hard. Um, Keep your opinions to yourself. Keep your opinions to yourself, which I get it. I do get it. That also comes with its problems later on. Be extremely respectful, because you don't know how someone's going to respond to you. So don't give them a reason to respond negatively. I think respect is really built into Ghanaian culture anyway. Um, but yeah, just don't be the fire starter. Do not incite anything. Um, Kind of, yeah, I have two sisters, and there was also this stick up for each other, stick together, protect each other, because really, you guys are all each other has in this world,
Yeah.
especially in a different country. Um, and and I think for ages they didn't expose us to the harshness of what else was out there until we experienced it, and then they kind of explained it. They didn't say someone's gonna say something horrible to you because of the color of your skin. So then when it happened, we came home, then we spoke about it. So I
How
would say I was quite protected or shielded, and naive. So when I
until
stepped
it
out,
happened.
yeah, for university college.
How old were you when you had your first experience, and what was it?
Yeah. I'd probably say I was like 13, 12, 13. And it was actually one of my neighbors.
Mm.
We grew up in an apartment building, and we were the only black family in that apartment block. And there was this family actually literally across the hallway from us. They had a young son, and he'll never see this. So, but they
Yeah.
had a young son, and he he was a bit of a rebel, but he
Mm.
was the first person to comment on the color of my skin, liken it to doo doo, just that kind of stuff. You're rubbish, you deserve to be in the toilet type thing. And it was definitely shocking, confusing. I was old enough to understand what that meant. And I have nephews. I know that even though we've progressed, um, the oldest one is 9, but by the age of 7, he had already had his first racist comments. And that's what he's told us. It could have
Mhm.
been earlier. So yeah, I was definitely old enough to know that this wasn't right, but just yeah, didn't know how to deal with it until I came home, told my parents. Um, and because of who it was, they were like, oh, don't listen to him. He's who is he? But then um, more comments sort of came, and then um, conversations were had, and then you kind of had to understand that yeah, because just because you're black, there's nothing else to it. It's you're not at fault, but we just live in a society where people have ideas about us that aren't correct. Uh,
Yes.
and as soon as they see your skin color, regardless of what comes out of your mouth, you fall under that category, whatever that perspective is that they have, you know, even if you're doing extremely well for yourself. So make sure you do well for yourself, because it could even be worse if
Yeah.
you're deemed as part of what's the problem with society. So
I
yeah.
think that's like a shared experience between just what it means to be black in the world,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Especially when you're, I think even in homogenous countries to some degree, because colorism still exists. Whiteness, what this year of travel has taught me is whiteness is centered no matter where I go in the world.
mm.
I would say growing up, for me, the experience was slightly different
Okay.
because one, I grew up in a city that was very mixed. So Baton Rouge, Louisiana is, I would say 50-50, right? So there's a very strong black community. So
Mm.
from kindergarten to until I went to third grade, I had
Mm.
only gone to school with black kids.
Oh,
Like
wow.
there were no other different types of students
Mhm.
in the classroom, and I only had one white teacher.
Oh, wow.
And so I knew about racism more so from the Martin Luther King reread a book. My
Mhm.
mom was born to a sharecropper's family. My great aunt still lived on the plantation.
Wow.
We visited often, but so I saw those things from that lens, but not the very nuanced
Mm,
things of, oh, you look like dirt. I don't like, or doo
mm,
doo, or something like that, right? It wasn't until I went to third grade where I was now going to a school that would be mixed. And I remember my mom now giving me like the same speech, and it's almost interesting of, and America is our home, that's the only home we know, right? But the
mhm,
similarities and the stories of speak when spoken to,
mhm,
be seen, not heard. This is these people's school. They probably don't want you there anyway. Don't cause any trouble.
Mm.
And that was the first time and I'm like, I've been going to school at this point now, like pre-K, kindergarten, first and second grade, and now I'm just
It's a
getting this speech.
mm.
Um, but I was emboldened because one, a lot of my friends from my elementary school also went to this school, so I
Mm.
wasn't alone. And there's such a separation.
Yeah.
Um, so all the black kids hung with the black kids, the white. So it was almost a us versus them versus
Mhm.
being the one of only and then having to deal with bullying. It was like, I wish you would. I still
Yeah.
have my crew over here, right? You don't want to mess with us. However, we still knew that whatever punishments may happen, ours may be more severe. We
Mm.
have a greater chance of being expelled or suspended, right? Like consequences are greater. However, like dealing with some of those nuanced things for me, for where I like grew up in the demographics of my school,
Mm.
that didn't happen. But I do find it interesting that the way and the speeches, no matter like what
Mm.
side of the world that you are, is to get in where you fit in and don't cause ruckus. And that only lasted third grade for me. By fourth grade, I caused ruckus, right? Because like I knew it wasn't right. But I think everyone comes to their own terms of when they say, yes, I understand where my parents were coming from, right? Of I need to, for whatever reason, not get in trouble and not let these things impact you. Keep your head down, do your work, let your work show, you belong.
For itself, yeah.
But when when did you get to the point of saying that was cute, but no, because
Mm.
I do feel globally, right? Like I think I don't think many can argue that like George Floyd was like a big global
Wake up call.
wake up call. However, work was being done in different pockets of the world prior to that. But there is a shift now of no more just
Yeah.
get by to get by. Like what's the expression of like getting along just to get along, right?
Mm.
Like going along just to get along. Like
Yeah.
I feel we've stopped that and now we're a little more empowered.
Yeah.
When did that happen for you?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned George Floyd because that was over 4 years ago,
Yeah,
and which is very recent. And I would say the same is the case for me. It wasn't, I mean, you were talking about fourth grade. You said it happened for
yeah.
you. I was like a fully fledged adult when I had that light bulb moment. And it actually came from kind of just seeing how one of my sisters operated in the world.
Mhm.
Um, it's yeah, it's really, really interesting what you were saying about um your experience at school because there were black kids in my school, but not as many as white kids or other ethnicities, and it was still quite fractured. So the safe spaces where I really truly felt a sense of community um, was at home and at church. We went to a local church, and that was very diverse, considering we were in like, yeah, it was just really reflective of a mixed society.
Yeah.
So it was
Are
like,
there black churches in the UK, like all black? Okay.
yeah, but they tend to be like African, Nigerian,
Mm.
Ghanaian, Jamaican, like they are
It's
black,
country
white,
specific too.
right? Not
Interesting.
just
Okay.
it's a black church, we're all rocking up. Like, so there are, and there's more these days. There are definitely more these days, but back then you, if you went to a black church, it was because you were Nigerian, and the Nigerian community went to maybe a plant from Nigeria, you know, like the church started off in Nigeria and then a pastor.
Mm,
Um, but the reason why I say all of that is because I had my little pockets of safe spaces where I could maybe be a bit more me. And then in the rest of the world, I was as described, you know, reserved, quiet, you know, sticking to the status quo. And then when I was coming to do my final stages of study before university or college, I went to a private, I had the opportunity to go to a private boarding school, which
mm.
was, I mean, full scholarship. So there's that. It wasn't something that I had in the, thank you. That's not even why I said it.
It doesn't matter.
my
Listen.
my parents were like, yeah, my kids are going to private school, you know, it was just an opportunity that presented itself. So that for me was an experience that took me further back. As in, if before I was like, I'm not gonna, you know, buck up against the status quo, now I'm certainly not, because I'm in the
Yes.
smallest of minorities. I was the only black girl in a school of 900. There were, I want to say, like 6 other black people who were boys, and then some Asians, well, a few Asians who were British born, but also international. They had a lot of international students that tended to be from different parts of Asia. But that was also interesting because, child,
I'm like, what? One of 900?
yeah, the only black girl of like 900 students, and back then, so I
And that's
was.
hair, makeup, all like girlhood in high school is like high, you know?
I was there for a year, and yeah, it was. There are so many stories I could tell, but you touched upon a very key aspect. So at that stage, my mum had just started letting me do weave, what we called weave-ons back then, before wigs.
What, what is
Weave.
a weed? What is that?
Oh, you don't know what a weave-on is? You didn't have that?
No.
Okay, it's you know, tracks like,
Yes.
well, now I feel like the girls kind of stick them on the wig caps, the tracks
Okay.
caps, but back in the day you would sew the tracks onto like your, like a sew-in.
Oh, okay. We call it a
Oh,
sew-in.
oh, okay,
Okay.
okay.
Girl,
We
that's
call
what
it
this
a
is
weave.
right now.
Oh,
Sewing.
oh,
So,
okay. It looks good. It looks good.
thank you.
I thought it was braids. I thought it was braids.
No, it's braids in the front and the sewing at the back.
Oh,
But
it's
okay,
not.
okay. A
Sorry.
weave on. That's good to know though. If I go to London, I can be like, I need a weave on, girl.
To be fair, if you were to say a sew-in, they'd know now. But back in the day, they were called weave-ons, and there was no leave out. There was no leave out in those days. You had the closed top. So
Yes.
I
Maybe the
remember being,
bangs
yeah, yeah, and I definitely had the bangs
and the shiny hair. The shiny hair.
and the kind of having it like
Yeah,
bubbly.
we used to have like they call it a 27 piece, and it was like all the pieces was already
Yeah.
pre-cut, and but we would glue tracks in back in the day.
Oh, that is that the short hairstyle.
Yeah, it'd be like a little doobie
Uh,
like bob thing, and you just glued them things
oh
in,
wow.
and y'all were elite to be
Yeah.
doing. I didn't go
So
well.
maybe,
I would say like 2005 is maybe when sew-ins in big cities became popular. I didn't get my first one till like 2008, 2009, and that
yeah.
was still ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I did the same actually. 2007 or 8. I had my first
Okay.
sewing.
Okay. So
Same.
you're at the boarding school with your weave on and
Well, we won, yeah. So at my old school, because that my secondary school in London. This boarding school was just outside London. My secondary school in London, it was very mixed. So it was really nice. And if you came in with a different hairstyle, you know, once a month, once every 3 weeks, whatever it was. No one's batting an eyelid because we're all doing it. And hair at that stage, people were playing with all of the things, like doing the braids and the slicked edges and the different styles. Yeah, in like inspired by the TLCs, all of that kind of stuff. We
Yes.
were doing that. Yeah. So it was kind of celebrated. It's like, oh, I like new hair. I need to, do you know what? I'm inspired
Yes.
by this kind of look. So I am keeping it simple. I'm doing my weave on, just trying to, assimilate straight hair, nothing
Yes.
crazy. And I turn up, I think it was day two, a girl in the boarding house she kept looking at me like this. So imagine like she's trying to peer on top of my head. She kept looking at me like, she was like, that's really weird. I can't see your scalp. What's that? Why is that? And I was just like, I had no clue what to say. Nobody had ever questioned me about a weave on.
Yeah,
And
yes.
it was common knowledge that your whole, like, everything was covered. And I thought, okay, how do I explain this? And I was like, well, this is like, this makes like being at boarding school easier because my hair's just plaited underneath, and all I have to do is straighten this, brush this in the morning, and I'm good to go. And she was like, so how does it work? It wasn't even a nice curiosity. It was like, and I was like, well, yeah, I've just braided my hair down and then they've kind of stitched it on. She's like, so you've sewn a wig onto your head. And this is in front of people, and this is day two. So it wasn't setting a good tone. It was not setting a good tone. I thought, how do I be me in this environment? How do
Yeah.
I navigate this when day two people are looking for my scalp?
What did you do? How did you that situation, but then in general, like
Yeah. I'll be real. It was that day, later that day, I went to my room, my dorm room, and I called my cousin up actually, and I was crying. I was like, I'm not doing this. I
yeah.
miss my little pocket of South London where, like I said, I was really protected. That environment of church and it being diverse, you came across people of all ethnicities that were accepting. Like that was definitely the best church I've ever been a part of. It just
Yes.
it ticked all the boxes. So you and some of my oldest friends are from that church. So you were meeting these people that were accepting you for you regardless of your skin color. So actually, funnily enough, that was my reference point for stepping into that opportunity of going to that boarding school. I thought, well, I've got friends that go to private school from church, and
Yeah.
I get on fine with them. This will be fine. So that was a real eye opener. Day two, the Lord was like, no, this is different. This is not like your church friends. And so I definitely like went into my shell after I had my little
Mm.
cry on the phone to my cousin. I went back into my shell and really did not speak unless spoken to. Really did not. Even when I knew the answer to the question in class, I did not put my hand up. And yeah, so in classes, for instance, before the teacher would arrive, we'd be already be seated, and there were many occasions where they were like, so where are you from? And I'm like, London. And they're like, which part? And I'd mention it's this small part of South London where I was born and raised, called Brixton. Well, everyone
Okay.
knows it now. Sorry, it's Tulse Hill, which is up the road from Brixton. I always say Brixton because people know Brixton, but
Okay.
people who know
Okay.
Brixton know Tulse Hill. And so I would say Tulse Hill, they'd be like, where? And then I'd say up the road from Brixton, and they'd be like, so have you seen a gun? Have you been stabbed? Like it would, because Brixton was very, very black back in the
That
day.
mm.
Very,
Was
very.
it okay? Was I'm assuming that also in London, very black neighborhoods translates to unsafe.
Depending on who you are, yes. Depending on who you are. So we grew up going to Brixton Market for our fresh meats, our, this and that. So I was very familiar with it, never deemed it as an unsafe place. And then when I got into the world of work and even sort of this experience at school, um, people that had not been regularly or at all had only heard maybe on the news. There was like a couple of estates in the in the back corner of Brixton where you'd
Yeah.
hear of incidents and things and gang culture and things. And so you'd hear that on the news and think, oh, Brixton as a whole.
Yeah.
Whereas in my whole, like, yeah, my whole life, I never saw a gun in Brixton at all. Never saw, any of that. And so again, it was another like, wow, just because I've said a place and because I'm black, you've got this perspective, and I must fall under the category of, degenerate or
Yes.
whatever you want to
Yes.
label me as a black person from South London. So yeah, further went into my shell, didn't rise to any of these comments, but as a result, just was really quiet. And then moving into my first job, I realized that my peers were progressing quicker than I was. And I started to sort of assess, and they were trusted more easily than I was. I started to assess why. And I realized that part of that was how I was interacting with people I deemed um, more advanced than me, or in terms of position or age. And I recognized it took me a while to piece it together, but I recognized that that actually was rooted in this, what my parents taught me about, if they're old enough to be your mum, respect them. Don't answer back. Don't, like, keep yourself to yourself. Don't share your opinion. So I was interacting with older colleagues or my boss as though they were my African auntie,
Yes.
you know, okay, Susie, da, 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 just this meek, mild type of vibe. And then, yeah, one day I realized that this person is not your auntie. They're on the same payroll as you. What is happening? Because
Yes.
you're letting them keep you down because you're not expressing, whether it's your opinion, showing that you're capable and just going along with what they're asking of you, as opposed to expressing like individuality or innovation. So
Yes.
I would definitely, sorry, that was a really long answer, but I would say
No.
my first job, which yeah, early 20s was when I started to be like, okay, no, I have to break the mold. And the sister that I was referring to, she's younger than me, and
Okay.
yet her the way she operated was very much, I mean, maybe it's typical youngest sibling vibes, but it was just like, I don't really care if that's what you have to say, I'm doing this.
I'm
And
not
so
prescribing to these things. Yes.
yeah. And so I was like, hang on a second. She's fine and she's not acquiescing to every demand of these people. I'm gonna start taking a leaf out of her
Yeah.
book. Um,
That's so interesting for a few reasons, especially as we think through just like parallels of experiences. Again, two different cultures,
mm-hmm,
not completely opposite sides of the world, but far enough distances, right? To have very similar experiences. There are studies that show Black employees are not promoted at the same level. And some of it does extend to this belief of what we were taught and
mm,
how to behave around certain demographics of people. And whereas, again, not all, do not want to generalize, but a lot of my white peers, they aren't taught this level of, yes, maybe they are taught obedience, but not by default of like silencing their voice and not being able to express their opinions, and not growing up with this notion of to be seen and
mm,
not heard,
mm,
speak when spoken to,
mm,
versus they present their ideas, right? Like they call their moms Pam and Mark, right? Like some of these like level of respectfulness that is embedded in a lot of cultures of
mm,
color doesn't
mm,
exist in a lot of European centric communities and culture in the same way, because
mm,
I had a very similar experience. Because okay, I mentioned I started third grade, I went to mixed school, and I only went to mixed school through eighth grade, right?
mm,
So formative years, but formative in a way. I just became very combative with my teachers. I
Mm.
was like, I felt like I was the lawyer of the class. Like I was calling the teachers out, like you're why all the black kids at this one table, even though I wasn't the black kid at the table, but the teacher used to do things like separate the classroom with whoever was smart and who wasn't. And some of the
Oh,
black kids, they all ended up at the same table because they weren't the smart kids or, you
wow.
know, got in more trouble. And I'm like, no, but Brian was over here doing the same
Mm,
thing. And you
mm,
didn't give him time out on the
mm.
wall, right? And
Wow.
I remember when my mom didn't stick up for I was like, I gotta do this myself because you
Yeah.
are you're gonna side with the teacher because you're gonna go right into the same
Yeah.
mindset. So I realized literally at 9 years old, like this is my fight and nobody else is gonna do this for me. But when I went to high school, I went to all black high school,
Mhm.
I went to all black college, right?
Okay.
And I graduate college, I'm going to work, and I defaulted to the speech that my mom gave me.
Mm.
Go to work, you're around these white people. They
Mhm.
already don't want you there. And that time, like you're the DEI candidate, and I like assume that persona. That's not true, right? I'm
Mhm.
here because I deserve to be here because I worked hard,
Wow.
because I have the skills and the capabilities to do the job, right? Um, but that's where I went. And I would do the same thing, be in
Mm,
my shell. I didn't know how to be myself. So
mm,
then I just was quiet
mhm.
until I figured it out. But what I also love is the ability to say, let me look within self first.
Mm.
Because I think, yes, could the other people be wrong? Like, yes, someone could pull you over to and say, like, hey, and you'll be like, why don't you speak up in the meetings? Or why do you just take my right? Like someone can coach you, yes.
Mhm.
However, you said, let me observe,
Yeah.
right? Let me see what my peers are doing differently and why they're getting better outcomes. And
Mhm.
I had to do the same thing, but it was different. It was like, Whitney, you grew up with this one thought about white people,
Mhm.
and you've never changed that thought. You never had to interact with them. You were in school. So
Mhm.
besides the school project, like I didn't need them to be successful. I just did
Yeah.
my own homework, right? And like I hung out with my friends. But this is a different ball game.
Yeah.
And yes, they could be doing things that are also harmful, that is also microaggressions, or straight out racist, because that happens
Yeah.
too. Um, However, you're looking for it because that's what you already believe that all of them are going to do.
Right.
How can you change what is at your core belief to something else?
Yeah.
Change your perspective and then see what happens. And I would say like things change because I shifted my focus,
Yeah.
but it's all because it's rooted in how we were taught to fit in these societies where we no matter if we came there through slavery or we immigrated to
Yeah.
another place by choice, there's a code of how we as black people deal with white people in these and in these environments,
Mm.
that until we get to the point of like, okay, how do I be my authentic self in
Mm.
these settings? I don't know if it's sir. It's the only way that I feel like a lot of generations felt was the way to know, right? Like
Definitely.
I don't blame my mom because she grew up in a generation where she could literally be killed, right? Maybe not her,
Oh,
but
but for
generations
real, yeah.
before, right? Lynch, beat up, throw rocks thrown at,
Mhm.
right? And that is her truth.
Yeah.
um your parents was like, I could probably have to be forced to go home. I came
Yeah.
here with a goal, with a purpose, forget all the rest of the stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
I need to stick to this.
Yeah.
Um,
I saw a post recently. Sorry to interrupt you,
no,
but
you're good.
this speaks exactly to this. I saw a post recently though that was because you said you don't blame your parents, and I don't blame my parents either. I have
Mm.
fully recognized that they did the best that they could. Um, and I actually recently reflecting the last few years was thinking these people came to a whole new country, not knowing the system, not knowing anyone really apart from their siblings, and they figured it out. And here we are today, and the post that I saw was like, I I had that moment of realization where it dawned on me that this is the first time my parents are doing it too. Like they're figuring it out just like we're figuring it out, and they were figuring it out back then within this new context. So I really try not to be when I have these reflections, I'm like, oh, it's rooted in how I'm raised. I really try not to then turn to this, you know, I guess approach of resentment, or because it's nothing to do with them failing in a way, in any way. They were figuring it out just like we're now figuring things out and carving our own path.
They were figuring it out, and I think like I had to just realize in this moment, like my mom grew up in Jim Crow. She went to
Can you
her
imagine?
baby sister is the one that integrated their high school. They
Oh
didn't know what
wow.
it even meant to go to school with, it wasn't an option, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, wow.
so like there was no code or rule book or anything, right? And she just doing what she knew. She went back to what she knew when it came to interacting with
Mm,
white people, right? Like my mom drank from colored only fountains, right? Like, so it's like
yeah.
that's a whole different thing. And here I am, because the other part is my mom had me at 37, right? So
Mm,
like she, most of my peers' parents was maybe the next generation after
mm,
my mom,
mm, mm,
but
mm,
my mom is still my mom, right? And like her experiences is what shapes how she raises her child. Probably the same with your parents, right? Like they didn't grow up talking about race, so like that's not gonna be a topic of conversation for like,
Absolutely.
you experience it the same way they experienced it when they got on the plane and arrived in London and was like, ooh, and
Yeah,
and that's right. Like there are parallels in that journey. I don't think I've like thought about that
yeah.
until now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's funny. I was at this talk the other day, and this girl, she's a motivational speaker, and she travels, and she was in Nigeria, and she went to a village in Nigeria, and she was talking to these girls about self-identity and confidence and things. And then she started touching upon I guess racism, and the kids were confused. They did not know what racism was. She had to kind of break it down and sort of relate it to what would have been their equivalent. And when she was telling this story, I was like, wow, even today, there are still parts of the world because of their environment that just don't have to deal with that concept in that form anyway.
Yes,
In that form.
there's
And
always going to be an ism,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
classism,
Colorism, because that's still
colorism. That's literally bleaching creams are crazy and everywhere, right? There's
normalized.
always going to be an ism, but like racism and then this dynamic, especially when you talk about diversifying spaces and bringing people from different backgrounds. When, I mean, from, I don't know when, but most places were homogenous. And it's just like what it was. And now, again, through force or through choice, um, there are certain pockets of the world that is now integrated and together. And we have to go through the ugliness to get to, but we have to have the conversations, right? Like we have to be emboldened to tell our side and to not like
Yeah,
go within and make sure people respect us.
Yeah, definitely.
And because that's it sucks that the marginalized is the one that have to speak up, but
Yeah. Oh, it
dude,
definitely
like
does.
no one else is gonna fight
Just like
for
you
you.
realized at school, yeah, that is your, yeah. I was gonna ask when you were telling that story, sorry, because I was so curious when you were saying you were standing up for the kids because Billy was doing that and you didn't tell Billy off, right? Did you at that point understand that this was rooted in racism because you were doing the comparison thing, or were you just like it's not right, on a
I
fundamental
knew it was so I think, and this is why I say like when it comes to like the things that I know,
level?
whatever God has for me in life, right? Like I'd had to be born to my mom, right? Like growing up, we still went to the same church that my mom went to when she grew up, right?
Mhm.
And that church was still on the plantation.
Oh,
So
wow.
every Sunday, we got in the car, drove 30 minutes to Alma Plantation, went to church, and then we went to go visit my great aunt. My great aunt literally still lived in the sharecroppers home. Like because she
Wow.
retired from there and they allowed you to, if you retire, they allow you to stay there rent free until you die. And she
Mm,
stayed there until at least she was on her deathbed and someone had to like take her
mhm.
in. And I think at a very young age, like you don't understand all of the things, but what I did know was there was this big house on the end of the street, and that's where the owners lived during the time when it was a. It still operates today. The plantation still runs today with Mexican workers. One of like maybe three in the state of Louisiana sugarcane plantations that still operates. But the house is abandoned, like the what you would call like the big house from the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
And I just would be in the car like, well, why this had to be y'all's house and why? And I just
Mm.
remember like asking, well, why? Where were y'all when Martin Luther King was marching? Like you was just going to church, like you
Mm.
like I just and my 8-year-old brain just like did not understand
Yeah.
like so y'all just was okay. And my
Mhm.
mom literally to this day will say they treated us nice. We had clothes. We had at least one pair of shoes for school. They gave us food.
Wow.
Like she never thought that anything was wrong.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm watching all the civil rights movies,
Mhm,
all the
mhm.
books. Ruby Bridges probably had just came out, like The Color of Freedom on Disney Channel,
Mhm.
like all of it. And I'm like,
Hang on a second.
something wrong with all of y'all because of
Yeah.
what? Like I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I would have been out there with Martin. So I think
Mhm.
I channeled that of like,
Yeah.
oh, y'all was just complacent and y'all didn't say anything. And I
Mhm.
remember like my first big word being prejudice, and that's because that's what I called my fourth grade teacher.
Wow. 4th grade.
My fourth grade teacher, and I was like, and I think it's because there was a stark difference between how the black kids were treated
Mm.
versus how the white kids were treated.
Mm.
Um, if you had a black parent who had the ability to come up to the school often and be engaged,
Mhm.
you didn't get in as much
Oh,
trouble, which was like how my mom was because she worked a job that allowed her
yeah.
to be engaged, come be a class. She was a classroom mother, right?
Wow.
Every other kid didn't have that. And
Mm.
so when they didn't, whatever the teacher did, and they may have been doing things where they probably did deserve to get in
Yeah.
trouble, but it was like, I noticed a stark difference. And I think it really happened for me when one time I got in trouble and me and the girl, she was a black girl, we got detention.
Mhm.
And these other kids, they got in a full on fight. I'm like, we didn't even fight.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
accidentally hit her. She hit me back, but we didn't even fight,
Yeah.
right? They were like throwing hands on the
Mm.
playground and they got timeout
Oh, and you guys got detention.
and we got detention. And I
Oh,
was like, and I went home, I was so mad to
wow.
tell my mom. And my mom was like, you know, I mean, it wasn't like quite the speech of like, you're black, you can't do everything, you know, like, but basically like the opposite of Because there's the opposite of you got to work twice as hard. There's also you got to be twice as good to not even get in trouble,
Mm.
right? Because like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can't
that's so
you
true.
can't do the same thing as someone else and expect the
Yeah,
same punishment.
yeah.
Um, and so I think because I saw these other things, and I was just determined, like literally, I have to say, like, you're not about to play in my face. Like,
Yeah,
I was like, that was my attitude. Like,
yeah.
at 9 years old, you're not about to play in my face, and like that's how
Mhm.
I
I love that.
felt. But I was doing it in the 9 year old way. Like, and I
Mhm.
stayed. When I say I stayed in trouble, I stayed in trouble. And I
Mm.
think the other, and when I say again, had to be born, me and my sister are 14 years apart. She's
Mhm.
14 years older. I
Mhm.
have cousins who is 5 years younger than my mom's
Mhm.
oldest sister.
Oh, okay.
So like 60.
Yeah, wow, okay.
I had no respect for adults,
Yeah.
honestly, because you're my cousin's
Yeah.
age and she don't know nothing. She might know
Mm.
something, but you know what I mean. Like she my cousin. At the end of the day,
Mm.
you could be my cousin, not
Yeah,
you're
true.
my teacher and you're an authority figure. It's like you my
Mhm.
cousin,
Mhm.
and so like I think because of that, I didn't fear authority in the
Mhm.
same way that most children do because you the same age as my sister or my
Yeah,
cousin, and
yeah.
like that level of respectability politics that was expected to play. I just didn't, and
Mhm.
of course you don't know the words for that at 8 and 9 years
Mhm.
old. But I just also remember always having to be on guard, like
Yeah.
always feeling that I need to make sure you're not playing them. I need to pay attention, and that came with this own. Because then I started doing that when I got back to work. How many black people in the room? How
Mm.
many, are they listening to me the same way? Are they inviting me to lunch, right? Like always taking counts.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that is what happens. Like I didn't know the words for it. I
Yeah.
just knew it didn't feel right. And I knew that my mom grew up in this structure, in this system that
Mm.
wasn't right, but we aren't there anymore. But they still,
Treat.
without knowing, still um, moved in that way.
Mhm.
And the expectation is that I would too. And I was just like, no, like we not. I drink from the same fountain everybody else. Like
Yeah.
them was your times, these
Yeah.
mine. Like we have to
Yeah.
figure something out, which leads to like my next question because again, parallels of like work environment. I know in America, well now DEI is about to RIP, but
Not
prior
just in America. Not just in.
this last election cycle in the
Mhm.
US, I've worked for global companies.
Mhm.
One thing that I always was interested and surprised by is Europe. Maybe not all countries, but a lot of countries in Europe in
Mhm.
general,
Mhm.
especially the UK. I could think of France. Like there are large representative populations of diversity. But when
Mhm.
we think about DEI from a global lens, we only look at women.
Mm. Mm.
Versus in the States, we also look at race.
Mm.
What has your
Yeah.
experience been like, or yours or friends from a corporate standpoint of support when it comes to race in the workplace? And are there initiatives and things or organizations and groups available to help
Mm.
change and bring that topic to light?
Yeah. I think it really depends on the industry and the organization, and that's probably not unique to the UK. Because as you were speaking, I was trying to think of scenarios, and dynamics in the previous sort of workplaces that I've been in. And because when you said it's typically with regards to gender as opposed to like race or ethnicity, I could agree. I could agree. I remember being in a team and this woman was like, "We're so diverse, we're so diverse." And I was looking around and I was like, "I'm the only black girl. How are we diverse?" But she was talking about ratio of men to women, and that took
Yeah.
me a while to sort of click. I was just like, what? And then sort of what you said kind of dawned on me that, oh, she's speaking about gender. Um, it's really interesting because I can't say that when I got my first job, I felt like I was a diversity hire, but um, I also recognized simultaneously that it helped that there were people of color on the panel.
Mhm.
So, and there was a woman. So, in that particular organization, that's why I say it's organization specific, because in that particular organization, um, it felt like the culture was not as bad as it could have been.
Mhm.
Because even though that was the case within the team that I entered, across all of HQ, it wasn't reflected. There weren't many black people at all. Um, there were loads of women. So I think your theory there is correct. And I think definitely since 2020, the year of We're Listening, um, initiatives have been put in place, but I don't think it's specifically your election cycle alone that's maybe gonna mean DI is gonna RIP, because I feel the same like tide is turning over here or has turned.
Mhm.
Um,
What are you
and
seeing?
well, that's why I referred to it of the year where of we're listening, because people don't want to listen anymore. People don't want to have conversations anymore. That's
Mhm.
the impression that I'm getting for the most part. And that's different to having conversations with my friends. Like I said, I grew up with very close, dear friends that were went to private schools, were white, you know. So it's not about sort of people I have relationship with. It's in those settings where now it's way more apparent that okay, this is an obligation to you more than something that you would you would choose to do. Um, so I think over here, this is my own assessment. I'm not.
Yes.
I'm not going to say it's the fact over here, but I do think we've had some tumultuous years since COVID,
Mm.
and even just before COVID, actually, that served to like oppose any argument about, I guess what affirmative action kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if that has a does that have a negative connotation, that phrase?
Well, no, affirmative action itself doesn't have a negative
I
connotation.
mean, amongst
However,
black people in America, do you guys see it as
no,
okay?
I don't think
Okay, good.
so.
I learned about it at school, and so I thought, oh, this is necessary because you're basically making up for the way you set, black families
Mhm.
back. But I don't know. I remember hearing a conversation where I was like, oh, maybe people don't like using that phrase anymore. I don't know. So I'm glad I
Yeah,
checked. But
it's been the Supreme Court justice
mhm.
ruled against affirmative action now on a federal
Mm,
level. So
okay.
states no longer have to uphold affirmative action anymore.
Okay. Okay. I think yeah, I do. That rings a bell now. That rings a bell.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've had an experience over here, which has been so interesting over the past. I'm gonna say 5 to 10 years, where there's been more of an exposure of the fact that there's racism here. And I was
Mhm.
going to introduce this earlier in the conversation, but I forgot. I think part of my parents' experience could have been a shock to the system because over here it's swept under the rug. It's
Hmm.
We uphold this, we get along well. There's no real problems in society between different ethnicities. But I think in the last 5 to 10 years, things have happened that have exposed it. We've had riots on both. Well, we've had riots that predominantly involved like young Black or ethnic minority like people, that then gave the media and people removed from those communities license to brand us with authority. Like, oh, these people are showing that I can say this because they're proving it in their behavior, right? So we've had things like that happen. And then so BLM then happened afterwards. George Floyd passed away, and then people were like, hang on a second, okay, maybe there is something that's wrong. Um, but then since then, I feel like various incidents have made it to mainstream media, and
Yes.
also um, the rise of social media, where what was kept in Black safe spaces offline entered the online space, and then now could it was exposed to misinterpretation or misappropriation. So I
Mm,
remember when I was at university and people started using things like Twitter, um, and they were just being like themselves but online, um,
yeah.
and communicating with other Black people, and so it wasn't a problem. But then years later, things are being dug up and misrepresented,
Mm,
being deemed as problematic, racist, all of the things that back then made sense within the context that it was in if it had not been online.
right.
So an exposure of like our community or the culture online to people that don't understand it then like led to uh again maybe a feeling, this is again my own assessment,
Yes.
but I'm assuming it led to this license people had to be like, actually Black people are this, or this is what they think about us.
Hmm.
um and I guess the problem with that is no group of people, there's no group of people that's like homogenous. There's no group of people that are like a monolith because that person does that, that person does that, or thinks that. um but definitely I think the media and social media has played into this, um or has encouraged people to be more vocal about um views that most would deem racist. My
Yes.
cousin shared a post, and it was just a bunch of university students enjoying like an event. I'm assuming was like an Afro Caribbean event because it was pretty much just Black people in the room doing just having fun. The comments beneath this post, I actually I was deeply upset by it because, and I was at the same time so grateful that social media was not what it is now when I was at university.
Mm,
I can't imagine coming online, after an enjoyable evening with my friends and wider members of my community, um, to see this type of commentary under something that has nothing to do with these people. Um,
what were
and
some of the comments?
oh, there are just a lot of, but this is barbaric. This is a lot of sarcasm. They'll say this is the superior culture. This is the problem with Western society. I wish I would pull up the post, but I don't want to upset myself.
Yes, please don't. We are not having, we're not reliving those
No.
moments. But it's so I'm in Asia right now in
Yeah.
Vietnam.
Yeah.
I've been in Southeast Asia since August, and I spent most of the year in Medellin. And what I've realized is I don't think any person of color is meant to fit in the box of Western standards,
Mm,
right?
absolutely.
Things that I remember growing up hearing, like colored people time or Black people can't do nothing right. And it's like there are literally so many parts of the world that
Mhm,
just does not subscribe
mhm,
to structure organization in the ways that Europeans and the Western world has
mm,
defined it.
mhm,
That even as an American, I'm like, oh, this is chaotic. And it's like, no, this works for them. This is
mm,
their system. And
mm,
I need to operate within their system because it's theirs. And if they
mm,
want to improve it, whatever that means for them,
mm,
let them. And I
mhm,
think what happens when anyone immigrates to Western society, again, by force or choice.
Mhm.
Um, we are expected to play by their rules.
Mm.
When I go to these other places and they're still their homogenous cultures,
Yeah.
those rules don't exist and it's just the norm. It's not called anything else. It's
Yeah.
not called barbaric. It's not called
Mm.
like there's this stigma to like black people are not no, people are loud. White
Yeah.
people are just not,
Yeah. Mm.
right? Like you force us in this box to fit your standard and that standard was not ours. And I
Mhm.
think the more we lean into appreciating our own and our uniqueness and who we are and being bold in that even in these spaces and not labeling what we do as something different and worse but just who we
Mhm.
are, and it could just be different and that
Mhm.
it just is what it is,
Yeah.
right? There is no, because I can say white people, some of y'all can be bland and have no spice. Literally, that's why y'all left y'all's place searching, trying to conquer the world because y'all don't have no flavor. You need to go find it and bring it in.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's like traveling has opened my lens to see like we are being forced to fit, and that's just not.
Yeah.
And so using their and they use that same mindset to then judge us when we aren't even on the same rubric.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone else's standard that just doesn't apply. Yeah, I completely.
It does not apply here, right? And again, not saying one is better, one is it just is what it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like trying to judge a fish on dry land or an
Mm.
elephant underwater.
Mhm. 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 Doesn't work. It,
Because it's
it's
not what we're
taking,
supposed to be.
yeah. Yeah, exactly what you're observing completely out of its context. So how else? Yeah, it's just not going to make sense.
It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So I want to shift topics one last time and kind of end here. And you talked about this very early on in
Mhm.
the conversation about how when you were growing up, some people would say, "I'm from the Caribbean," right? And this is my like first time really hearing about a hierarchy within the diaspora, right? And if for some people in the audience, they may not know what the diaspora is. The diaspora is what we, or the Black diaspora is what we refer to
Yeah.
people who either grew up on the continent of Africa, um, and we all descended from Africa, no matter again
Yeah.
by force or by choice.
Mhm.
We are the diaspora, and it's what Blackness is globally,
Mhm. Mhm.
but respecting and understanding that whenever we left the motherland, our histories then started to
Yeah.
split and create new cultures, and but we all are from
Yeah.
Africa, specifically West Africa,
Mhm.
where blackness is, you know, where we're from. That's our
Mhm.
root.
Mhm.
What was the hierarchy of like, and also I think the main conversation that I want to have is
Mm.
there a unity that exists between the black cultures, no matter if it's through country, continent, career, like does that exist
Yeah.
or is it also siloed?
It's so funny. I would say today there's more unity for sure. In the modern day, definitely more unity. When I was growing up, it was definitely via country. Um, and that's where you experience or our parents, those who immigrated and became sort of British citizens later, um, where it was probably the closest they experienced to a freedom that they would have felt at home, feeling. So it was within uh, communities defined by country first. Um, and depending on which part of London you grew up in as well, that then determined whether there was unity within the black people living in that area or not. In South London, which is where I grew up, I would say we were in the middle of that spectrum,
Mm,
but also there was a nuance of male, whether you were male or female as well. Because when we
mhm.
became teenagers, the black experience for the males, which is probably is the same in America,
Yeah.
became way more different and more dangerous than
Mm,
the female experience. And that was internally, so within the black community, as well as amongst non-black people, the threat of danger that the males faced was heightened once we became teenagers. Um, but growing up as just a black person, there was definitely division. So
mm,
the hierarchy was you were automatically at the top if you had like lighter skin, yeah, and nice like I'm gonna scrap that. Softer hair,
yes.
lighter
Yeah.
skin and softer hair. A lot of the time, from my experience, the schools that I went to and stuff, those people tended to have Caribbean parents, and so
Hmm.
they would often be at the top of the hierarchy, and then the middle. I mean, it was probably quite a flat hierarchy because then you had a bunch of us at the bottom. Um, I often There was also a division between East and West Africans because in London as well, if you were to visit London, South London in particular, but London in general, back in the 90s and early 2000s, you would travel through pockets of London and you would know this is where the East Africans are. And even within that, the Ethiopians, the Somalians,
Yeah.
um, do you know what I mean? So it was very divided. They had heavy concentrations in different parts of Southwest London, and then we had our little Ghanaian pockets, scattered across London, North London, South London, Eastish. Hardly any that I can like vouch for in the West, but anyway, um, and and then you would most often come across Nigerians everywhere as well. Nigerians were everywhere. Um,
Nigerians are everywhere. Shout out to them because that's how I got my hair done. But yes.
oh, exactly. We love them. Exactly. I love that they're everywhere. I met a Nigerian doctor who spoke Russian, and I was like, "Huh?" He's like, "I studied medicine in Russia." I was just like, "Wow, you guys really are everywhere." And I
Wow,
love it.
literally everywhere. That's crazy. I
Yeah.
love it.
But you had like such fractured sort of, yeah. The black community was there, but lived in pockets, existed in pockets, and
Hmm.
my outside of my church, my first experience of true unity, like unfiltered, was at university. Yeah, where you're just now looking for anyone black because it's not a black space.
Yes.
But we didn't
Yeah.
have black university. We don't. I don't think we. Yeah, we didn't have black universities. Not officially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, again, because I grew up in the South,
Mm,
right? So most, even I would say the people from the Caribbean or even Latin America or Africa that may immigrate to the US
mm,
in large, right? Like there are some pockets within the South, like maybe Houston,
mm,
Dallas, Atlanta, like more of your larger cities.
mm-hmm.
But where I'm from in Baton Rouge, like, yes, there were definitely some Nigerians again, because they're everywhere. Probably, but like one no one asked. I think I
Mm,
never forget the first time it was a white guy, but I was working, asked, I was telling him I was going out with a friend. She's a white girl. And he was like, "Where is she from?" And I'm like, "South Carolina." And he's like, "No, where is she from?" And I'm like, "A city in South Carolina." Like, I don't, what are
mm,
you asking? He's like, "No, is she like Irish or like," and I said, "Well, I don't know what boat my family came from. So why would I be asking
yeah,
what
yeah.
boat somebody else got off of?"
Mm,
Um, and honestly, it wasn't until grad school that I met my first black person. Like, that wasn't African. Like, we knew Africans, but
yeah.
like, that was from somewhere else. Like his first language was Spanish, and I was
Mm.
confused, right? Because I'll be honest, like I probably was like late 20s, early 30s before I truly understood the magnitude of what the diaspora was,
Yeah.
how the slave trade truly worked. Like we were everywhere. Like I just didn't grasp, like, and especially in America, everything is just black or white. Like we
Mm.
don't think about the rest of the world. I mean,
Mm.
I think some of that is just like an American trait, and some of it is just like, I don't know, ignorance on whoever's part. But like, I just didn't think about those things. And I do remember seeing people like, "Oh, you're excited with a Jamaican flag," but I don't think that like it ever registered. Like, I used to
Mm.
like, "Oh, those New York people." Like, I don't know. Like, it
Mm.
didn't. I didn't fully understand. But in Louisiana, we had something called mulattoes, which were people who maybe had some white lineage
Mm.
somewhere down the bloodline, or a lot of mixed
Mhm.
people. Um, and the same thing, colorism, like the lighter the better, the curlier the hair, those were things that were considered desirable traits. But like when you're in all black environments, like yeah, they may get more boyfriends, but
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
um and they may get a few more concessions when somebody
Yeah.
come by them some snacks. But I don't know if it was like a, from my experience at least, again, because I went to either very mixed schools or all black schools.
Mm.
There, of course, are some people in Baton Rouge who did not have this experience, and they went
Mm.
to majority white schools, just depending on what schools that their parents decided to send them to. But everybody was just black, so like
Oh,
there was no separation of country because
yeah.
we just all black, right? Like
Mhm.
there is nothing to separate by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I do, from stories that I now know of people who grew up in, again, these major cities in the
Yeah.
states. Um, they do separate, like there's neighborhoods, like this is the Dominican neighborhood, this is the Puerto
Mm.
Rican neighborhood, this is the, I don't know where the West Africans fit in New York. Like I don't know that experience,
Mhm.
but like it was more by neighborhood. And then if you were like, from my experience in the South, if you were like maybe from somewhere else and you were black and you had a funny accent, like it needed to be like a way we knew you were. I think it really just depended on what was your kind of character and your personality of how
Mm.
you fit in.
Yeah.
I would say I'm pretty sure some people were mean. I don't remember any. I remember like having some African girls either in my summer camp or my Girl Scout troop,
Mhm.
but never in my,
Like
a
immediate.
few in my school, a few, very few. One girl that I'm thinking of, but not a
Not
lot.
many.
So I
Yeah.
think that was like something now that I think about a lot, especially as I
Yeah.
travel. One, understanding the experience
Mhm.
of, but there seems to be, I mean, we're in both westernized
Yeah.
societies. So curious to like talk to people from like Latin America, or that may, I mean, even being here, like there's a large population of Nigerians in Malaysia. Like, what has that experience been like? But
Mm.
I do think for the bigger cities, it is by country and there is hierarchy.
Mhm.
Again, whiteness is always centered.
Yeah.
And there is more of a push for unity amongst the diaspora because at the end of the day, we were all victimized in some way. I think my hopes of this is that we see, one, not only do we have shared experiences,
Mhm.
um, but we are better together.
Yeah. More
Um,
open to. unity and unifying.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because of the shared experiences. Like, I do think there are a lot of misconceptions, and you see it online. But based on a lot of what you said today, I'm really intrigued to hear more, to be honest, about your side and your
Yes.
side of this. But based on the what you have shared, I can see the parallels that I did not know existed before. Um,
Yeah.
because yeah, you're not in the. I've visited the States a few times, but you're not living the life the people there are living. So you have like a slither of insight
Yes.
into what life's like. But there are so many parallels. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I think, but like, I still went to HBCU, and
Mm,
there were some students who were African
mm,
at our school, and especially most of them, not all, but quite a few of them were transfer students in engineering.
mm.
And there was a divide. And I'll be honest, I was queen of divide. Like, you are not me, I am not you.
Yeah.
Um, the way they dress, their attitude towards black people, like black Americans, like
Mm.
there was this, maybe it was a perception of us,
Mm-hmm.
or like that we had, that they felt like they were better than us or smarter. Um, and I think it's media shapes things, right? Like,
For sure.
especially people who came directly from the continent, right? Where you just hear stories about Black Americans, like, we're violent, we're loud, we're ghetto, we're this, we're that, and you don't want to fit in with that. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of separation because we're all listening to the same media, consuming it in ways that is not beneficial for either side. Because at the end of the day, when you come over
Mm-hmm.
here, they're still going to see you as a black. Or
Yeah.
when I say over here, I mean to America,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
they're still going to see you as a black person. It doesn't matter if you're a descendant of slave or,
I'm
you fresh off the
American.
boat or off the plane, child. Like, you are literally a black person.
Yeah.
Yes, we've had different experiences that has shaped us. However, we need to unite in a
Absolutely.
way that's productive and that's healthy. Um, but it starts on, honestly, on both sides, especially I'm looking at this from like a very American lens too, because we do have the slight nuance of, I am American still.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
of course, some immigrants are Americans too, right? But what I mean is, like, America is the only place that my
Yeah.
family
You can
has
call.
known that was not taken from them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so we had, like, this is the only place I know, but because I do have family members that will tell you they're not connected to Africa, right? No
Mm-hmm.
matter, because of the same thing that you mentioned earlier, right? Of like I know people who probably tease people, is like, oh, do you ride a lion to work? Like, just very
Yeah.
ignorant things, because we're still American, right?
Yeah.
Like, we still have this ignorance that exists, and but it's both sides. Like, the same way people from the continent are fed things about us, we're and
Yeah.
like, we keep ourselves divided. And I think that was orchestrated, and it will be a disservice if we do not
Like
come
to
together.
undo that divide.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
What do you think is something that we can do, we should
mm,
be doing? How do we learn about each other, at least to meet at a place of understanding to start moving forward?
yeah. I think that's such a good question. I think conversations like this are so important because you know what you were talking about in terms of there being a divide and kind of being your school as well, the experiences there. I think um what I've observed about or heard about America for the most part is the education is a very America centric, whereas the rest of the world has to be educated about a large portion of the world,
Yeah.
including America being at mainly the center. So I feel like an assumption I'm making here is that a lot of the Africans that do end up traveling, they feel like they already know their
Mm,
education system coupled with what the media portrays. And over the years, it's been mixed. America obviously has the brand of the most powerful country in the
mhm.
world, but then you do get the sides that you referenced that kind of gives this impression of there's like ghetto culture, there's this, there's that. So they're coming from a place of we're informed, we know about you already, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't want to generalize. People travel for different reasons, but if we're talking about the context of um, education, international school fees are not cheap. So the ones that
Right.
are traveling to study specifically, they're likely of a higher class, social
Yeah.
class anyway. So there could be a lot that's informing this kind of we're different, we're better than you
Yeah.
vibe that they're giving off. But conversations like this help educate, I feel, about the similarities. So I really love what you're doing, by the way. I really do.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being here.
One of the things I do love about traveling, because we didn't really talk about that much, but whenever I see a black person overseas, regardless of the nuances and the dynamics that exist where we're from, I feel like, oh, my people, I'm gonna
Yes.
find you. We're gonna
The
have fun.
head nod, the hey girl, hey. Yes.
Yeah. So and through conversations, even in that context, you begin to learn, okay, like we're from different parts of the world, but we can connect, we can enjoy each other's company. And there's way more we have in common than we're giving, than we initially have programmed ourselves to give ourselves credit for. So I think definitely more conversations, using the tools that we have like social media to kind of share like these conversations and more insights, but to also encourage like um us to, going back to what you said about it's a shame that the marginalized have to be the ones to do the work to speak up. It's also on us to create the spaces where we
Yes.
can integrate. And there are places. I remember when I can't remember who it was, but I remember you asking me like, where do black people hang out in the UK or London? Because
Yeah.
you want, when you come, you want to be able to get in those spaces, and it's about kind of creating more of those spaces and promoting or giving those spaces a high profile so that people know where to go to find
Yes.
like more people like themselves.
And on that note, I
Yeah,
am going to get you to share with me. So we're going to drop a Black London guide of
I
restaurants,
will.
establishments,
I will.
places to go. So when anyone is in London, outside of London, and they're looking for the Black experience, they know what places to pop up at so we can continue to support, see each other, open the room and the opportunity to have more of these conversations. I mean, we met in Portugal, it was the
Yeah.
same type of vibe to the point where literally one of my friends from grad school was going to London. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Newbie came to New York. I'm like, I'm gonna find my way to New York, right?
Yeah.
And I just think, and there was never like a beat that we missed of like, oh, like it's still a shared
Yeah.
Black experience. We still do the look, we still
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the faces, the all of the things. I just feel like it's beautiful to see of like what's encoded in our
Mhm, mhm,
DNA
mhm.
as Black people. And I think we're gonna end here on with the final question.
Yeah, okay.
What does it mean to be Black for
Oh,
you?
wow, it's such a big question, but I feel like I'm really happy to say that I've been through enough, seen enough, and continuing to teach myself, um, so that I'm at a place where I'm really proud to be Black. I think it's something to celebrate, and this, in the context of what I said, about the primary school, the younger experience where you'd be scared to open your mouth to say you're African. I Yeah, I take great pride in the fact that I'm black, in the fact that I'm of Ghanaian heritage. I love Ghana. Um, my favorite dishes are Ghanaian dishes. Some of my favorite music, Ghanaian music, and I was born and raised in the UK. So I really celebrate that I'm from such rich like cultural background, um, and that's as a black person, but then also as a Ghanaian. Um, and I really enjoy taking moments to like share about where I like what makes me me in that sense from that perspective. Every opportunity I get, and not just because now Ghana is one of the destinations in Africa that's like a place
Yes.
now. Even before that, I would tell my friends, we're doing a group trip to Ghana at some point. We are doing a group trip. You're gonna try some of the food. We're gonna enjoy. I think another aspect. So I don't want to go on, but another aspect of what makes me proud is that um, not because it's something to take pride in, but we've had to be resilient, and I really admire that about Black people. And so again feeds into that sense of pride. One of the times I came to New York, I did this tour in Harlem, and something that stuck with me. It was about pretty much about the musicians that came out of Harlem, but it touched upon like the Black experience in general, and the fact that to be great, like to come out and be something, you had to
Yes.
master a number of things, and then one of your things would be the thing that got you to a place of prominence, but you still had this catalog of talent, of skill. And I feel like that is really reflective of who we are. We are resilient and so capable, and I think we don't hear that enough, so we don't appreciate that enough about us. But yeah, it's a real source of pride, which is a joy to say, because like I said, that's not how things started.
Yes.
That's not how things started. Can I ask you the same question? What does it mean?
Yes. To me, being black and like what makes me proud is the resiliency of all black people to literally get up each day in a world that never centers you
Mm,
and still say, I am going to show up. I'm going to
mm,
show up great,
mm,
and I'm going to be whatever best version of me that I can. We fight wars and many battles that are
mm.
not advertised,
Yeah,
right? We deal with things that we don't even speak of because we've internalized that it's just the way that it is, and we don't give ourselves enough credit of the work that we have to do to constantly overcome.
yeah,
And we still show up and we produce greatness, no
yeah,
matter if it's in corporate, if it's in art, if it's in sports. Like, and I don't want people to think that all things black is rooted in this having to rise and come up, but even those that may have started their journey rooted in a little more privilege, the people
mm,
that came before them had to do a
yeah,
lot of fighting and a lot of work, and we're standing on their shoulders.
yeah.
And no one, listen, we are the vibe, okay? Like,
I
no
love it.
matter where we go in the world, blackness is a vibe. And I want us to believe that
Hmm.
as much as other people believe it, even when they don't want to admit it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree. 100%.
Um, but like, it's a beautiful thing. Like
Beautiful.
like
Yeah.
they say, it's lit over here. It is
Is it
lit
too
over
late?
here. I
Mhm.
wouldn't want to be literally anything else.
I agree. I agree. Same here. And I'm looking forward to kind of helping other people, whether it's through conversations like this or just people like encounter, feel the same and learn to acknowledge if they're not black, learn to like accept that truth about
Yes.
the black community.
Yes. And like to own it and own it with a full sense of joy and respect and no sadness or
Mm.
and that takes out in like that takes a lot of work. Like
Oh.
as someone who grew up in a very black environment that like there was a meme going around recently that was like I didn't know growing up in black spaces around people who were proud to be black was a luxury,
Mm.
right? And even though I grew up around that,
Mhm.
life finds a way to still make you question and look at your skin. I remember like being at work and looking at my skin and saying like because of this color,
Mhm.
I'm gonna like do I ever get peace? Do I ever
Mhm.
get rest outside of something that I can't control?
Control.
Um, like why is like even when I get to a point of where I think I'm doing well, there's
Mm.
another reminder of because you're black, there's still just another battle waiting around the corner.
Yeah.
And I like brown skin girl got me through, right? Like
We love it.
that
That
song
was the anthem.
got me through because it was just like when I walk in the room, like I'm the person that
Mm.
they notice.
Mhm.
Like my skin is a story of all the things that I've been through, right? It does get tiring, right? I would admit it gets tiring. Being here in Asia, it gets tiring, right? Because, and I think especially as a Black American,
Mm.
it's a sad realization that there is nowhere I can go in this world and completely be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nowhere.
Mm.
Because in America, I'm still not American enough. My American is questioned. In
Mhm.
Africa, I'm not African enough, right? And in other places, I'm just completely different, right? Especially walking around these Asian streets,
Mm.
right? Some of it is people admire the beauty, and it's like you want the best parts, but you don't have to deal with. You want
Right.
the kinky hair, you want the curls, you want the big butt, the big lips, the
Mhm.
whatever the stereotypes that comes
Yeah.
with. Some of it is true, right? With being Black, it's like you
Mhm.
want those things, but I don't get to choose. I
Yeah.
don't get to choose, but yeah, I still show up and I shine every day,
Mhm. Absolutely.
and it's I don't know about people from other backgrounds and cultures to this degree, right? Because they like, and I'll talk to more of people from other to like understand. But it's it's a blessing and it's a fight, and
Yeah.
I'm stronger for it. I'm better for it, and I think, and that's why I want us to come together because I think we can truly, truly, truly create Wakanda on Earth. Seriously, yeah, I think that is the goal and like what I would love to see
Mm.
one
Mm.
day. So yeah,
Same.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Like I said, there's so much more I want to hear, but
Oh.
and time is not on our side. So no, thank you so much.
Yes,
And
yes,
I look
yes.
forward to hearing some of the other conversations you have with
Oh,
others. I'm gonna be here waiting, ready to
yes.
listen and share. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to end it now. Let's see.